Hi Laura, my name is Elizabeth Garcia, and I was in the presentation that you conducted last Wednesday for Dr. Borrego on how to create a different world so we can better communicate. And so he asked us to have three things that we liked about the presentation and how we were going to implement it in our daily lives. So one of the first things that I liked about the presentation was the quote that was used. The map is not the territory. And exactly what I derived from it was that it's not really the object, it's how I feel about it, the belief. And I did have to Google some of the information only because I'm not familiar with it. And that how you react to something is not the reality itself. It's how the belief over time has caused that reality. And I think, you touched very brief on beliefs and where it is that we learn this and how we know that a person is credible. And I suppose that I was very superficial, that I felt that a person is credible when other people believe that he's credible. And that's definitely what I learned from that quote. And it's very, even when you Google it, just the reality of it is that you don't really know anything. It's the belief that you had, from my opinion, the belief that you had from that object, that's a reality. And it's very broad, but only because of beliefs. Also, the iceberg metaphor. I really like the metaphor only because the presentation on it was that the iceberg floats in the water and that a huge mass remains below, underneath the surface. And what I got out of it was only that a very small percentage of what it really is actually visible, and the rest is the unconscious that nobody really knows, that no one really understands, and it's our demons, it's our inner conflicts, and the visible part, which would be the top of the iceberg, is only supported by the surface below. And I really like that metaphor only because that is us, our personal selves and our professional selves, and really distinguishing that from the workplace and being home. Also, what I liked was the video that you showed us about linear communication and circular communication. I never really understood that. I think I had an issue with it only because I wasn't familiar. You did mention that Westerners are very circular, and in Asia they're not. They're very linear. And I suppose that I learned that to be a linear communicator from my previous boss. He was very linear. He was very direct on what he wanted. He wasn't detail oriented in giving directions, only that. So it was kind of, get it, go and get it done. And I guess I implemented that in my workplace, and it created a little bit of a conflict only because I wasn't familiar, and I just figured that everybody, was very linear, and that's how it's done, and that's how you get it done, without me having to explain to you the background of it so that they could better understand. So Dr. Borrego asked us how we're going to implement it in our daily lives. And definitely the linear and circular communication was a big thing for me, and I really enjoyed that part. I did have a presentation with my subordinates the week that I came back, and I told them that I was more of a linear communicator, and they were kind of looking at me like, what are you talking about? So I explained to them, the circular communicator and the linear communicator. And I made them sign, just a couple I made like a small survey on what I learned, and they were off. I think they didn't really understand why I was asking these questions, but most of them, with the 3 out of the 5 that I had the meeting with, circled that they're very circular communicators. And I think that was a conflict that we were having at work, and I was just thinking, why can't they just understand that this is how it's done, and picking up the pace. And really trying to understand that other people around me are not, linear communicators or circular communicators. So I also learned that in order for me to be a linear communicator, I also need to adapt. So I started adapting, I think, a little bit better. I sit down and I listen and I really try to take it in. Definitely not trying to interrupt them while they're speaking. And the last thing that I plan to do is I definitely plan to include this in my daily life, even in my in my personal life, trying to be, more circular, so we can bond. So that's the end of my presentation. I guess it's only 5 minutes. I live in Wesco, Texas, and that's 2,189 miles away from Boston, and that's exactly about 33 hours. It's not exactly because I said about. So it's about 33 hours away from where you are. It's a border town in Texas, and that's the furthest south you can get, literally. I live about 5 minutes away from the border. And I appreciate you taking the time, and I look forward to having more presentations because definitely they were very insightful, and I appreciate you taking the time to do this for us. Have a good night.